In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a beautiful ring using PotterUSA's ring pattern plates. First, you're going to start by annealing your metal. This is 16 gauge sterling silver sheet metal. I think anything less than 1 millimeter in thickness is just way too thin for a ring. 1 millimeter thick is the same as 18 gauge. This is 16 gauge, so it's just a little thicker than that. But really, thicker material tends to be much more comfortable as a ring. And then it doesn't have to be as large as the whole pattern plate, but you definitely want excess metal on all sides of the pattern that you're rolling. Just in case it rolls a little crooked or anything, make sure you have enough metal there to allow for any error. So I'm just annealing this strip of 16 gauge sterling silver sheet. Our torch is running out of oxygen, so that's why the flame's a bit weird. And then we're ready to roll it in the rolling mill. So here I am figuring out the right tightness on our rolling mill. And for us here, the way we do that is we feed our sheet with the pattern plate into the rolling mill, tighten it down until it's tight, and then rotate the handle one full turn so that we can release the pattern and the silver, and then tighten it back down to that place and tighten it another half turn and then roll it. And you can see I got a really beautiful impression, so now I'm just ready to cut my excess sheet metal off. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with my jeweler's saw. Just cut around the pattern, and I am going to leave a small kind of border around the pattern so that I have room to file and sand and finish without losing any of my pattern. So I cut off the edges, and then I'm going to cut one straight flat edge and then measure the length for how long I need my material to be for the particular ring size I'm making. So I sawed one end flat, and then I'm filing it to make sure that I have a nice straight flat edge to measure from. So then I'm going to measure the length of material that I need. And there are different charts and formulas you can follow for this online. But this is the length that I need for my ring. So I've marked it, and then I'm going to saw off that end as well. So I've sawed that end as straight as I can, and then I'm going to file this end as well. And both ends, you want them to be completely flat so that when you bring them together for soldering, you get a nice tight joint. So here's my ring blank with my two flat ends. And because this material has been rolled and it's fairly thick, I'm going to anneal it again before I try to bend it for soldering. Just want to make that metal a bit more soft and malleable so that I can bring the ends together before I solder. Okay, so this is annealed, it's pickled and cleaned, and now I can just bend it with my hands. You could use a ring bending tool, ring bending pliers, any of the ways that you normally bend rings. And I'm really not worried about the shape at this point. We'll worry about rounding it out after we solder the ring closed. What I'm worried about now is bringing those ends together pretty much straight across so that I can get a perfect solder joint and have it really nice and clean and strong and tight, and then we can round it up afterwards. So you can see, this is called a butt seam. You can see how those two edges of the sheet metal butt right up against each other. And this makes for a very strong solder join. Sorry for the camera vibrating. I didn't realize that was happening until afterwards. So you can see I have a nice tight fit. And now I'm ready to go solder. So I've fluxed my ring. Gonna get some little solder chips ready here. And then we're gonna get this joint soldered closed. I'm kind of fighting with this torch. The oxygen is very, very low, but we're gonna make the best of it. I like to heat everything up before I place my solder chips. That way the liquid in the flux burns off, and so my solder chips aren't bubbling around and flying across the room. I wait until the flux gets kind of glassy and sticky before placing my solder chips. But you can do it however is comfortable for you. It really doesn't matter. And then because I have a pattern on the outside of this ring, that pattern that we rolled with the rolling mill, I'm actually going to place my solder chips on the inside of the ring in the hopes that I don't flood any of my pattern with solder, because sanding solder off of a patterned area means you're removing your pattern, and it's a bummer when that happens. So I'm going to place the solder on the inside and then draw it through the seam with heat. And this torch is really fighting me. I'm going to change the tip and see if that helps make things go a little smoother. We need to replace our oxygen tank. So now I'm going to heat from the opposite side and just pull the solder through that seam with the heat. And the solder flowed. And this is after pickling. You can see that I have some excess solder, but the solder flowed all the way through that joint. And now we can worry about shaping the ring. So initially I'm just going to tap it down with the rawhide mallet. You definitely want to use a hammer that is not going to mar your metal. And I'm just tapping it open so that I can get it, open enough to put on the ring mandrel for forming. And then I'm going to slide it onto the ring mandrel and also use the rawhide mallet. You could also use a nylon hammer. Something that's not going to mar or stretch the metal. And just slowly form it round, making sure to flip the ring because you're using a tapered mandrel. You don't want to end up with a tapered ring. Just form it until it's completely round. And the thicker your material, the more effort this will take. And then once it's round, we're really ready for the finishing process. So I'm going to sand my top and bottom edges nice and flat. And then my next step will be to kind of chamfer the corners on the edges of the ring so that it's comfortable, it's not cutting into my skin or anything like that. And I'm just doing that with a half round file. So I'll do the inside edge and then also the outside corner edge. Just round everything out so it's really nice and comfortable in my hand. And then once I've finished filing, I will switch to using flex shaft tools for further finishing. You can see how I have that nice kind of chamfered beveled edge. And then I'm ready to move on to the flex shaft tools. So I'm going to start with some sanding drums to sand the inside of my ring. And I'll just work my way through the various grits of these until I get a polished inside. And then I like to use silicone wheels to refine and round the edges. So this is just a medium grit black silicone wheel. And you can see it's starting to really shape up and look really nice. Our final step is just polishing. So I'm going to take it to the polishing wheel with some rouge and shine it up. These rings would also look beautiful with a patina down in the recessed areas, so you can think about that. This one I'm just going to leave bright silver. And this is what it looks like after it's been polished and all finished. So try out our ring plates. They're really fun. They make beautiful jewelry. Thanks, guys.